All right. Sorry we're late. We had some technical difficulties, but we've got them all straightened out. So we will call our Wednesday, April 13th, 2022 Executive Committee of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors to order. And let the roll show everyone's here except Tom, and Jim was gonna join us, wasn't he?
He said he would.
Okay, we're expecting Jim yet, but Tom isn't gonna be able to make it today. Approval of minutes. Diane had her hand up, so Supervisor Steen moves and Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Moving on to public comments. Have anybody heard of anything? Evidently not. Moving on to county manager's report. Review of the draft April 19, 2022 county board agenda.
Yeah, let me find it here. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen.
You're not sharing it.
I'm trying to.
Oh.
All right, I'm gonna stop the share and then start it again. I think it wasn't keeping up with me.
You're too fast.
Yeah, I think I was clicking faster than the Zoom can keep up.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm gonna enlarge it. Okay, usual things, call to order, pledge of allegiance, call of the roll. We're gonna have introduction of the new supervisors and swearing in. Recognition of contributions of past members. And then we'll have the election of the chair and then the vice chair. Supervisor Bartlett has told me that he would come in and preside over the meeting until the election of the chair process is completed. At that time, the gavel will be turned over to whoever is elected board chair, and then we'll elect the vice chair. We have approval of minutes. March 16th, regular meeting of the county board, and March 26th, capital projects workshop meeting. Getting down appointments. I think there are a couple of appointments we're going to need to have. And that includes the medical examiner. And I think there's one other one. Report of the county manager. There are no purchase orders over $40,000. So I'm going to talk about some of the changes in personnel. Reports of the departments. We have emergency communication, emergency management, sheriff, and libraries. I'm going to send a reminder out. I still am missing a couple of library reports. Reports of the committees. I have that highlighted in yellow. I don't know what we've done is if there are committee chairs who want to give specific reports to the county board, we identify them here. So if any committee chairs want to report, we'll include that. Otherwise, I'll just remove that item.
Looks like you can remove it.
I shall. And then we've got the resolutions and ordinances. Highway Committee has an ordinance amending the vehicle registration fee ordinance. This removed the sunset clause on it. And we've got the Workers' Memorial Day and then amending the employee handbook. The one that's highlighted in yellow, if you look up there, this is actually one that was supposed to have been approved last month. And somehow an earlier draft, so we had three different changes. And we had a draft with two of them in there, and then we added a third one, but the wrong draft got forwarded up to the county board. And Supervisor Headland even asked me about it after the meeting was done, because he recognized that it was missing something. Anyway, there's the missing thing right there. That'll be coming up. And I have this on the screen because it's not in the one you got in your packet. And then there are some a resolution and two ordinances coming from the executive committee. Ostensibly, one of them still has to be forwarded or voted on today and forwarded. And then Planning, Resources and Development Committee has a couple of resolutions. And I see that needs to be. And so that's the agenda that I have so far. Stop the share on that.
Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Nick, if I might ask,
Yes.
who will be reporting for the libraries? It says the library report.
Well, in the past, I guess the most recent custom that we've had is they submit written reports, and then when I reached out to everyone, I said, you're not expected to deliver an oral report to the county board, but if you wish to be present at the meeting, if there are any questions, or if you'd like to come up and just make a few remarks, you may. And so I have not heard from anybody that they're planning on being here. I assume the sheriff will be, and I assume that Melissa Gillenbach will be for the emergency communications and emergency government.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, I've been chairman of the county planning library, and of course, there's four of these people that are on the county library boards. So it'd be nice if somebody, but I just wondered who's going to head that up, and somebody should report, right? On the
Well, we're
libraries.
gonna have written reports from each one of them. Just
So
like,
you'll have that ahead of time.
Hopefully,
we
yeah.
should.
The new supervisor will all have that ahead of time.
They should.
Yes.
Oh, that's what I wanted to
Whatever
know.
reports we have will go out in our packet tomorrow morning.
Okay, I hope they read it. Thank you.
If you'd like, I can check in with Jolene Stirk and see about, I'm on the library board for city, so I can poke them. I'll put a note in my,
And I'll be honest, we have people waiting to get in. I reached out at the email addresses that I had available to me. And so I suppose it's possible that I might have missed somebody, but. Okay.
Well, I would suggest then that maybe you three supervisors that, represent your own libraries in your own villages, maybe give them a call tomorrow morning and mention that. Because even if they can't get it in time to send it out with the board packet, it still can be sent out electronically.
And we can bring
or
paper
at least
copies.
have a paper copy at their desk when, at their seats when they come to the county board.
Dave, I would maybe suggest, I want to suggest our library should come down and make a short
Or, Mr. Chairman, delay the library report a month.
Well, I know that librarian in Santa Cruz, her father is in the hospital, not doing well. So I just got an email on that
Oh.
today. So that might be why you haven't gotten anything
Well, that
from
might
her.
explain one of them.
Yeah.
And boys, we got.
Yeah, I did. I got Boyce Phil's.
Okay, okay. I heard my daughter had
I don't
another baby, and I know that she was watching her 2-year-old daughter, so.
Welcome, Mr. Tripp.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
Well,
Good afternoon, everyone.
We were just talking about the agenda for county board next week is what we're talking about. That's where we're at in the meeting. So not very far.
Am I late?
No, not really.
I must be.
delaying in a month certainly wouldn't present any logistical problems.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I would suggest that, or if you need a motion, I'll make a motion. We delay it a month for the library reports.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded, and we delay the library reports for 1 month. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'll,
All right.
and if those of you with connections there would let them know, and I'll do my best on my end to let them know too.
All right. Anything else on that? For your report?
No,
All
thank
right.
you. I've been so busy, I can't remember what I did the last 2 days.
Items placed at the request of the chair, non-actions to be taken by the executive committee. 7A, recruitment of the county manager.
Heather is on.
Yep. Should we have a motion for that first?
I'll second.
All right, Supervisor Steen and Supervisor Morehouse moves and seconds. Heather, do you want to explain this for us, please?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
So as you know, effective March 11th, former county manager Paul Miller retired from Dunn County. So Chairperson Bartlett and I have met. We've had a couple of discussions regarding the process of filling that vacancy. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about what that's going to look like. So we're here today. I'm going to present some of the options for recruiting to fill that vacancy, and then we would just ask that the executive committee provide us with that direction of how what process you'd like us to carry out. So in our review process, we really talked about 4 different strategies that we could consider. The first one being the public search by a recruitment firm. I believe that was how the search was conducted when Mr. Miller was hired. This would basically enlist an outside search firm. They would do all of the background and the recruitment and look for candidates for us. Advantages is it does provide a wide network for the search. They oftentimes have a list of candidates who might be looking for an opportunity or relocation to a location such as Dunn County. They will reach out to qualified individuals and discuss the position using resources such as LinkedIn. They'll do some research. Sometimes, again, within their database, they have those individuals to reach out to. They then conduct initial interviews prior to the county receiving the list of candidates to make sure they're qualified, make sure they're individuals that are truly interested in the position. Detailed information is then provided to the county on each candidate, and then selection out of that group of individuals is made to conduct interviews, and they'll work through the interview process with the committee and really get you through from the beginning to the end. Disadvantage, it can be lengthy. It can take up to 14 weeks or longer, and the cost is right around $22,000. I just averaged it out based on some previous requests for quotes that I've done on other positions, and I believe this one would fall in that same price range. So then we talked about a public search by human resources. This is the primary search process that we use for position vacancies that occur within the county. So this is human resources really driving that process. It covers a national and a statewide search. So whenever we post a position or we start advertising a position, it automatically sends out to all of the national search sites. Indeed, we can post out to LinkedIn. So we're automatically linked to a lot of those sites. The county is able to review the application materials of all internal and external candidates, and then still make that decision on who to interview. Basically, it's then human resources driving the process versus an outside search firm, and we can look at what that process really would look like. Disadvantage, although we can shorten the process than that of using the recruitment firm, it still does take some time to complete if we're going to do it fully and make sure that we're getting all of the best qualified candidates to talk to. We could just do an internal search, post internal to Dunn County employees only. That does provide internal employees an opportunity to express interested, and if they're qualified, interview for the position. It allows the county to be able to review all of the internal candidates, and it definitely reduces the time to fill a position. The disadvantage is it's a pretty narrow scope, really, of individuals. The time limits are definitely much shorter, as we talked about, but it also could result in no qualified candidates for a position, and then we would have to go outside and search anyway. So that then adds on some time to fill the position. Finally, county ordinance does permit the promotion of a qualified internal candidate without conducting any search at all. Advantage, the time to fill the position is greatly reduced. You would decide who it is and make that offer internally. Again, the disadvantage is a very narrowly focused recruitment. In other words, you're focusing on one individual. Other potentially qualified candidates would not be considered, which at times can cause the potential for morale to decline a bit if there are interested other candidates throughout the organization. There's also then a potential for a challenging working relationship that can occur. So, the newly appointed individual then becomes the manager of someone that was interested in the position, and that person wasn't even considered. It also opens the potential for a risk for a claim by a candidate who is interested but wasn't considered. So the recommendation, best practices in all recruitment and hiring activities, really wants to reinforce that fairness and that impartial recruitment process, and really being transparent in how decisions are made throughout the process to mitigate any legal risk. So all of the above options are available and they're appropriate for the executive committee to consider, but we would ask that you just keep those objectives in mind. We are not recommending, and certainly Chairperson Bartlett, if I'm over speaking, let me know, but we're not recommending the use of the outside search firm at this point. HR has progressed to the point, as I mentioned, that we're able to recruit, and it pushes out to those national sites. An outside recruitment firm really, it's a costly option, and we believe that we could drive that process equally as effectively. Can always go to that process if it doesn't work out, but we believe it's a good option. We are not necessarily recommending the internal search or the promotion. It really, for this level of a position, I would recommend that at least for a period of time, we do an outside recruitment, make sure that we're reviewing all of the qualified candidates that are interested. And then the county is really confident that they have explored all opportunities and hired the best qualified individual. I did put in here a proposed timeline. It's nothing concrete. Things happen, things change, but ultimately what we're looking for today to get us started is to determine which process you'd like to use. And then we can move forward with possibly putting together a committee to figure out the actual interview process, what steps we'd like to take. I did put a sample interview process in there, or options for interview processes that could also be considered, with the recommendation being the first interview consisting of all of the members of the executive committee and a representative from the Human Resources Department, with the Human Resources representative just asking questions that are developed in advance. So upon the completion of the first interviews, that's when the executive committee will determine if second interviews are necessary. Sometimes they are, sometimes there's the standout candidate. And then from there, you would determine your next steps. So did want to include the salary range. So that truly is negotiated and included in an employment agreement with whomever you would select. But we would anticipate the range to be somewhere from 121 to 160,000, depending again on that experience and the qualifications of the individual selected. So the committee is asked to review the options for recruiting to fill the position and provide direction to Human Resources on how you'd like to proceed. And then we're also asking that you establish that subcommittee to kind of coordinate that interview process and report back and put that all together.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I basically affirm the recommendations that Heather has included, but my question, Heather, and please understand that this is not in any way a criticism, but with your departure and the fact that we're hiring a replacement for our Human Services Director, does the HR department have the capacity to do two really high level and critically important searches at essentially the same time?
I believe we do, but I would maybe defer to interim county manager Lang, who would ultimately be overseeing that department. I believe we have the talent within Human Resources. I believe we have the work distributed, and in all honesty, even though I'm resigning, I will definitely be available to that HR team to answer questions and help them as things come up, as long as the county's amenable to that. So.
Thank you.
In addition, we are working on a potential agreement with Heather's new employer to have her provide as needed services, including continuing mentoring of whoever would take over after she's truly gone, and other stuff. So I don't really foresee a problem with having HR staff available and ready to provide services to get this work done.
And I guess working with Jenna and Heather, that I'm very confident that they can do it. Supervisor McCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that option B is probably our best choice with a HHS-driven process. I think that that worked very well, hiring Dustin on as a highway commissioner, and I would like to see us make an attempt similar to that.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Steen?
Yeah, this is for Heather. It's my understanding that you're going to shepherd the Human Services Committee through their hiring process. Is that correct?
I am in the background a bit, but yes, I am certainly going to be available, but I'm keeping Jenna up to speed so that there is always a point of contact available, just in case I'm in meetings with my new employer and something comes up. So I promise you'll be taken care of, and we will make sure that we're hitting those deadlines.
Thank you.
We have, I guess I should have told you earlier, Jenna has been appointed as the interim HR manager or HR director, and she's been brought into almost everything that's going on now. So
She's very qualified. She'll do a
yeah,
good
she's
job.
doing a really good job.
Supervisor Headland.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion if we can on
We
this.
did.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that a
Yep.
motion? Okay, then, did you make?
We're,
Well,
Diane
I seconded.
seconded it,
Oh, you seconded.
but
Okay,
we're ready to vote.
All right.
Well-
If we are.
if we are.
Yeah, I would, just for formality, it would be good if the person who made the motion and the person who seconded the motion acknowledged their acceptance of whatever terms it is that you're going to move forward with. And do you want to appoint a committee right now, or do you
I
want to
think
take
that
this?
would be the second thing, but the
Okay.
motion was to accept I think the motion was to accept the recommendation.
Okay,
And we either vote on accepting the recommendation, or if we don't pass that, then we'll have to vote on we'll have to decide another way. But the motion was for the recommendation, to get it on the table.
Correct.
So if we're ready to vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Now we have to decide on what the subcommittee would be. And I would recommend that whoever the chair of the county board be involved. And I guess whoever chair of probably admin, maybe. I'm just throwing that out there. Go from there. I started the discussion. It's up to you. Supervisor Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I would think it would be no more than right that it would be chair, vice chair, and if Mr. Headland is the chair of admin. That's my feeling.
And then, of course, your HR and your county manager,
It said
interim county
three,
manager,
three board members, didn't it say? Or
I believe.
supervisors? Yeah, that's what I meant, yeah.
and if you think it's necessary, we can look for outside help too. I helped Eau Claire County recently interview their corporation council candidates, and
That's they're appointing a committee to kind of put that process together and be
I'm
able to
sorry.
timely and report back to the executive committee. And then we would determine the interview team within that committee.
sorry.
Yeah, and that would be more when you're interviewing that you might bring in outside help from
Right.
another county. But, this would be a subcommittee to get the ball rolling, so to speak.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Morehouse.
That process seems to be working fairly well with Human Services. We have one of our citizen members working on the subcommittee, and Vice Chair Steen and I working with Human Resources, and it's been productive and works quite effectively.
Well, it looks like we have 3. If we go with the chair, the vice chair, and the chair of admin. So along with staff. So do we need a motion for that?
Sure.
If I might first,
Go ahead, Supervisor McCullough.
thank you, Mr. Chair. When we get to the interview process, I think it would be particularly useful to have the chairs of HHS, Judiciary and Law, and Highway involved.
Yeah.
Because those are our 3 big, our largest groups of employees.
And I would guess when you get to the interview process, you'll probably have it on your agenda again, and you'll talk about what process you want to use for that, for the interview team. You may want them involved, and you may want the interview team for the voting part, the executive committee, and have them part of the team that you can talk with them and get their feelings, or maybe somebody from another county. But I think that's something that, like I said, will probably be on the agenda later on as you get closer to that process and see what candidates you have and whatever. So getting back, do you want a motion on this or just thumbs up?
Motion's good.
I so move.
All right, so it's chair, vice chair, and chair of admin, plus
And then
staff.
HR director and county manager staff. Okay.
Well. Yeah, I need a second.
I will second the motion.
And you'll have to work out that HR director, whether it's a acting or interim or,
Yeah,
whatever. Okay,
I'm
any
optimistic
discussion?
Heather will be helping us for a while.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried. All right. Yes,
Are you going to address the timeline now? The suggested timeline, or is that something we should wait on, or I think sooner the better, actually.
I would guess that we would
Leave it to the committee?
leave it to the committee or HR would get started on it.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first thing to get going on is,
Right.
Get advertised for it and the subcommittee can get together as the advertising is going on. Or after they see what names they get, go from there. All right, 7B, approval of the 2023 FY budget calendar.
This one has changed a little too. This is covering up
And what changed on it?
some of the dates. Before Keith left, he apparently had prepared a fiscal year 2023 budget calendar. If you'll recall, there has been a I guess a kind of a concern that committees are doing work later in the summer on budget stuff. And it doesn't really come back to the full county board until it's reported in September. And so Paul had come up with the idea of having a budget workshop where all of the department, and of course, this is subject to your direction, but basically all of the departmental budget proposals would be reviewed by the county board in a workshop type meeting in August. And instead of having everything go into individual committees and then go back into administration and a change is made, so it would come to the county board in a budget workshop. Well, as I was looking at it, after we sent it out, and I met with Beata today, some of the timelines in comparison to previous years were coming later. For example, the budget timeline that Keith had prepared had the first information about the budget going out to departments on June 1st. And ordinarily, that stuff's already been back into administration by then. And I got concerned, especially if we're not going to have the traditional or the usual standing committee reviews of things, but have a workshop instead where all of the county board comes together and goes through everything. Downside, it has the potential to be a kind of long meeting, but this was Paul's idea, and some of the momentum is still present in these documents. But anyway, I just felt that waiting until June 1st to give the instructions and, the directions, expectations and so forth was a little too late in the planning year. particularly if it becomes apparent that committees would still like to meet and have at it. And so we did modify some of the timeline. If you look in the packet at your calendar, this, let's see, this area, so this, we have this at June or at May 6th right now. That was previously set at June 1st. So it's coming up almost a month, not quite a month. But we just felt it would be better to move that date up. We feel, Beata feels very strongly that we'll be able to get the budget instructions, the expectations, you know, the no increase instructions and all that. She feels that we will be able to get that to the departments by then. We're going to have a management staff meeting on April 28th, where we'll break the ice with the managers and talk about it and let them know that it's coming up in the next week. And then a few things after that were then moved up because with the June 1st date of informing departments of, you know, it's time to start working on your budget. Moving that to May 6th allowed us to move the things that follow that up in time as well. And so by the time we get to later in the year, so, and then it's pretty much the same. Their draft budgets have to come in by June 3rd. And then after that, the county manager and the CFO will begin putting that stuff together for the county board. They're at the June 27th county board meeting, or July 27th, I'm sorry. The budget information that we have, or the draft that we have, will be distributed and reported on. And then we have this date in here. This is tentative, but August 13th, that is a Saturday. And we picked a Saturday because we don't want to get overdone with our meeting at 1 o'clock in the morning. And given the weather that we've been having lately, who knows, it could be snowing. But anyway, and then after that, it really gets kind of back on track again. So we got the administration compiling any updates that come as a result of the county board workshop. And like I said, it enlarges that summer period between the meeting where the first good draft is coming up to the county board and reported. It adds almost 4 weeks onto it, which, like I said, if committees really want to schedule it, departments in to review things, they certainly may. And so that's really what that's what's changed in it. Otherwise, the rest of this stuff is okay. And Beata, this ends up being another one of those years where we're going to have to adjust, or we may have to adjust our October county board meeting because of the shortness between the short time between the October meeting and the November meeting. The November meeting is set by state law, and the county board can change it. But unless that's done, sometimes the last 2 out of the last 3 years, we have not had enough time between our October meeting, regularly scheduled October meeting, and our November meeting in order to meet statutory timelines for publishing notice of the budget hearing, public hearing, and noticing and publishing the budget. So those are otherwise, I guess that summarizes the nature of the changes that we made. And, I think this is a timeline. It's a projection that I think is reasonable. And we're going to do our level best in order to meet it.
I totally agree with what Nick said, except that it wasn't really Paul's idea. That was something that I have asked for. Keith and I talked about it a lot. last year, the end of last year, during budget, getting November time. And a number of supervisors, Mike Rogers probably being one of the most vocal, but would like to be involved more with the whole budget than just the committee budget. And this is a way to do it. It doesn't quite bring it back to the times when I'll go back a long time ago when my father was on the board. They had about a 2-day budget meetings down here, and they went through, the whole budget book. But that's when they started the budget, and that's when they finished it. They worked on it till it was done. Maybe your dad was in on it too. But this, I think going through the budget, there's a certain amount in every budget that you can't change. I mean, you go through it once, you talk about it, the PEP stuff. Every department is going to be the same. You'd say the same stuff, so you don't have to go through that in every budget. I don't think it's going to be an all-day meeting. I would expect it to be a half-day meeting. I think it would be a very beneficial half-day meeting, and that's why I asked for it. But I didn't think our March 26th budget meeting would go quite as long as it did, and it did, but it was very beneficial. So you can't blame Paul for that, although he endorsed it. And so did Keith, and so did Beata. Supervisor McCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I spent some time out talking with both Paul and Keith about this. And I know, and I think the changes in this calendar are good choices. I know that one of the other concerns was that finance essentially had to calculate and recalculate for every meeting, and it was eating up an enormous amount of staff time. And so the latest budget was out of date for the appropriate meeting. And I know Keith was going constantly meeting. And I think if this process can be made to work, I think it will be significantly more efficient.
Right. It's all right for the committees to look at it before this August budget meeting, but finance probably isn't going to make changes to it. Because that was one of the things we talked about, you're right, was to eliminate how many times finance has to go through and do the changes. Heather, did you have something to add?
If I may, I just wanted to say that I've been actively involved, well, I shouldn't say me, but the HR department is very, very involved in the budget process and all of those calculations. And after every committee meeting, whatever is decided, doing those calculations, and it gets to be really, really late nights for the administration team. So I just wanted to add, I was fully in support of switching from, the committee reviews and then the changes and the continuous changes. It gets to be overwhelming and quite impactful to your admin staff.
Okay, Supervisor Steen, did you have something?
Yes, I agree 100%. I'm visualizing the August 13th workshop to be a lot like the one we had the other night, right?
That's what I would visualize.
And I thought that was really, I've been on the board a couple different times, and that's the most educational meeting that I can recall having regarding the budget. And secondarily, as a rookie on the board a few years ago, you would get it from the executive committee, and then you're supposed to vote for it. And then my comment at the time was, when do I get to help make the sausage? And I think this gives everybody a little bit more ownership of what's going on. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Any other discussion? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just.
Yes, come on up. You get to come up to the podium.
ready.
Yes.
I would also like to add that I'm looking at the way we do our budget. And my goal is to re-engineer some of the workbooks. So it's more automated workbook. So hopefully my goal is to, when it's time for the workshop, we can play out some scenarios by updating certain, should I say, update certain variables, and what would that mean to the budget overall. So I'm working really hard on re-engineering those workbooks, making them more savvy, more, you touch it once and then let the workbook do all its magic. And that includes the PEP, link the PEP into my workbooks. So if the directive is to change, let's say, insurance benefit, will automatically all feed into the workbooks and update. So that would eliminate some of that back and forth manual entry. I also a big believer that the more you manually enter, the higher chance of making an error. So if I can automate a lot of the workbooks and the way the budget is done, hopefully that would eliminate some of the room for error, but also speed up that process as well. So I just wanted to kind of share what I've been working on. I've been actually working on those workbooks for the last month or so, including the PEP. So stay tuned for some exciting stuff. So thank you.
All right, anything else? I need a motion on this. Supervisor Headland moves, Supervisor Johnson seconds. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the calendar or budget calendar?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Supervisor Morehouse.
just a request that this revised calendar be sent to us,
Oh, yes.
because what's in our packet is outdated.
I would guess the revised one would be in your county board packet.
It will.
ODA. Okay, yep.
All right, moving on. Mr. Lang handed out the next ordinance 8A, right?
Yes,
You handed that out?
yes,
You sent it out also.
I did.
Supervisor Tripp would have it in an email. You would have got it this afternoon. Okay. Discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Supervisor Tripp.
I would move that we recommend this ordinance change for passage to the county board.
Thank you. Is there a second to this? Supervisor McCullough seconds. Discussion? Or have we discussed it enough that you know what you're getting? Or do you want to read it? Take a minute to read it. I realize the idea was, we've talked about it, but you didn't really see it in print until now, so. Take some time to read it. When you're ready, let me know. Pretty much done reading it. Any questions on it? More discussion now that you've read it, looked it over? If not, are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, thank you. 8B, resolutions for budget adjustment, Child Support Agency.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Supervisor Tripp.
I would move that we recommend the budget adjustment for, or does the executive committee do this? We get to approve this, right?
Yes.
We do.
Anyway, I'm gonna move approval
All right.
and then ask Josie to tell you all about that extra $986.
She's on already.
I see it.
Supervisor Steen seconds.
Steen.
All right, Josie, go ahead. Well,
Sure. Well, so I thought everything had already come out in the wash and I had already reported to my standing committee what my 2021 numbers were. And then like March 3rd, I get this random $986 deposited from 2018, 2019 incentives that we earned. So instead of putting that money back into 2021, I'd like to carry it forward to 2022 and use it to purchase some new office chairs for my my staff. I had a new hire start on March 1st and I was embarrassed and I lined up 3 rickety old chairs for her and I said, well, take your pick. So I'd like to get her a new one.
all right. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Resolutions for budget adjustment for the Human Services Department, 8B2.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Steen seconds. Any discussion? Chris is here. Thank you. If there's any questions, Chris can answer everything. She knows it all.
Pretty self-explanatory, but Chris
It
is
was.
here.
Any discussion, questions? Not all in favor, let's say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Oh, it's simple. 8B3 for the Public Health Department. Budget adjustment.
I'll move approval.
Morehouse moves. Oh, Supervisor Steen, so I'm looking the wrong way. Supervisor Steen seconds. Any discussion, questions?
KT is not here.
No, I wanted to make, I didn't want to miss her if she was here.
No, she's not here.
Okay, if she wanted to say something, I wanted to make sure I give her a chance. If there's no questions, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Okay. Review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. From the executive committee, the ordinance amending chapter 2 regarding scheduling of meetings by the executive committee. This is second reading, so you all had it last month, if you remember. Any discussion on that or questions? Not, all right. From the highway committee. Ordinance amending section 7.5.1 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the vehicle registration fee. This is the first reading. So, questions on this? Speaking to this, or it's pretty self-explanatory, except we've eliminated the sunset clause, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, it's
Everything else is
basically,
the same,
no, I think it's just, yeah, it's just carrying it forward.
right? But I mean, the price is the same.
Price is the same. And we're not forwarding to county board the sunset clause. We will see how that goes.
Any discussion? Questions? Not? All right. I lost where it was. 9C from the Committee on Administration, a resolution amending the employee handbook. Talked a little bit about that already.
One of them is for equipment. And then the other one is the Martin Luther King Day floating holiday equivalent that we missed last month.
Any questions? All right, if not, 9D from the Planning Resource and Development Committee, a resolution authorizing participation in the DNR targeted management and notice of intent discharge grant programs. Now, these are two kind of related, 9D1 and 2. Tom isn't here, but we
Mr.
do have
Chairman, with
Chase.
your permission, Chase Cummings is here and would like to speak to this.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask for. Because this was a little more complicated than the other one, the other ones.
Good afternoon, everyone. Too loud, sorry.
No.
Okay, yeah, so both of these resolutions, the first one being authorization to participate in a state grant program through the Department of Natural Resources, which authorizes us to apply for a grant to assist landowners in compliance with ag performance standards. This particular resolution is an update to a resolution that was adopted by the county board a year ago in April. The reason for the update is that in that previous resolution, we did not include the notice of intent or discharge grant program. We weren't anticipating that applying for such a grant, and now we are. So this particular resolution updates that to include that authorization to apply for that additional grant. And that's what the first agenda item is.
And you might as well move right on to
Sure.
D2.
The second one is a resolution specifically for a specific farm to apply for a notice of intent or discharge grant. The particular farm is the Greg Thompson Farm in the township of Wilson. Our office has been working with that landowner for many years to address a runoff issue from a manure storage facility. The manure storage facility has a compromised liner, which could be impacting groundwater quality. It also has overtopped in the past where manure has discharged to a tributary to Pine Creek, which also ultimately discharges to the Red Cedar River. The point of this application and this grant is to assist that landowner in compliance with ag performance standards. Because this farm is in existence as of 2002 and the structures that are on the facility were in existence at that time, it predated the adoption of state rules addressing these performance standards. Therefore, cost share is required to be offered to come into compliance. Projects like these, cost share funds that we have readily at our disposal are nowhere near the amount that is needed to achieve compliance. So application for state grants such as these will help with that project. This grant will also be likely piggybacked with federal dollars and potentially other sources of funds to assist the landowner. The landowner is also in a position to apply for economic hardship, which would allow for 90% cost share rather than the normal 70% required by statute. So this second resolution is authorizing us to apply on behalf of this particular project for the Greg Thompson situation.
Thank you. Any questions? All right,
Comment from Mr. Chairman?
go ahead.
Supervisor Morehouse and I sit on this committee and we had this meeting yesterday morning. And Chase really covered this very well. And so my comment as an outgoing member, Chase, you really did an outstanding job on doing all this background so we can hopefully get these grants. I think I asked this question, these are grants. And so how likely are we to get them? You answered that before. I want everybody else to know.
Yes, that's a good point. Thank you. So these are, as a grant application, they are typically competitive grants. We have experienced in last year when a similar resolution went through for another farm for a targeted runoff management grant, which was a competitive grant. There are caps on those grants. And we were 4 points shy of getting that award. So that project fell through, which makes it more challenging to address the situation. The reason for applying for this notice of intent and discharge grant is it is a little bit less competitive. The funding cap is a little bit higher. So our likelihood of obtaining this grant is more real. We are in the process working with DNR on this particular project. So the likelihood of this being awarded is more in our favor. As a result, because it is a grant, likely if awarded, a budget amendment would be required as a part of this. Because this grant would be potentially construction could start yet this year versus other grant applications where you would budget for them in the following year. So it is grant funds. Any money in or any money going out as expense would be recouped through grant. So no expense to the levy other than staff time.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, we'll move on and thank you. Reports from the standing committees. Start with Mr. McCullough.
So we met this morning. The main takeaway beyond routine operations is that everything involving macadam, tar, seal coat, HDPE for culverts is up between 20 and 50% from the material cost last year. Things are ugly expensive on the highway side. And that is my report.
Supervisor Morehouse, Health and Human Services.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We last met on March 24th, but so much has happened in the interim. It just seems like such a long time ago. We did review our progress to date on hiring for a new human services director. And I think, as I said earlier, Supervisor Steen and one of our citizen members, Dr. Alex Hall, is working with us, and we're working with Heather and Jenna to move that forward. We had normal reports from all three. Our veteran service officer always just gives them the clearest and most helpful and instructive reports. Public Health, at my request, reported on the number of health department programs that are actually mandated in statute, things that can't be altered or changed massively. We also looked at the annual report, which has been produced in draft form, and an updated Health Done Right community needs assessment. Human Services did a normal update along with a little quiz for the members about Dunn County, which was quite instructive. None of us knew none of us knew the answers, let's just put it that way. And she also talked about the Families First child welfare reform program. Budgetarily, some good news in the health department through a kind of combination of grant and grant reporting and services that weren't necessarily provided during the COVID epidemic. $268,000 is going to be returned to the general fund. And Human Services is, again, we never really know what the amount returned to the levy, but it's looking like $2 million, almost $3 million to return to the levy. And that's my report. We meet next on April 28th.
Thank you. Supervisor Headland, Admin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our admin committee last met Thursday, March 24th, 3 o'clock. Again, it was as always, a lot of considerations of items. One adjustment first was offered by the HR department, and that was a continuum almost adjustment to the COVID-19 policies. As you know, when the numbers get good, we slacken off and try to, give people, more freedom, move about our buildings and mask mandates and so forth. And then as things have gotten tougher in terms of people contracting COVID-19, we kind of did a about face and had to modify them back. So that was, we made an adjustment again at that point. Of course, we audited the vouchers as presented, and never finding anything real. We get oftentimes, we do ask if you tune into our meetings for explanations of a lot of the fees. And one of the things we find with that is not to alarm people, but is the fact that a lot of companies who
go under a certain name because of COVID have maybe taken over another company or another division of a company. And we get some real strange names providing some services that we really question why we're paying that company this particular amount of money. But oftentimes, in fact, all the time, later on, it's been explained to us as to where that money went. And then the majority of the time, that is the issue, is that it looks like, why are we dealing with a company whose name is this when we're buying this from them? And the other thing, the resolutions that we're presenting today, changes to the handbook, made some adjustments for taking care of replenishment of equipment, individual employees in terms of the sheriff's department, and highway department. And then also we had passed resolution for proclaiming Workers' Memorial Day. And of course, we've done that all year to year, and important thing to do. And then our next meeting coming up here will be the 28th of this month. Whether I'll be running that meeting or not, I don't know. But anyway, that is the scheduled meeting unless that gets changed. So on my report, it's just tentative. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson, the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last meeting was March 17th. Administrator Meyer provided the committee with updates from Quality Assurance Steering Committee. We discussed recruitment, turnover, and lost time due to the COVID related issues. The census was at 99 at the end of February. Arrowhead and Fireside remain closed. Scott with Facilities updated the committee on the annunciator panel and the nurse call system server. Administrator Meyer updated us on the fundraiser for the new resident bus. I see they have another one going. I believe maybe it was yesterday you had to have you signed up for it. I didn't think so. We reviewed the vouchers and financials and approved them. And our next meeting was supposed to be the 21st, but I understand that maybe we might not be able to have that. Is that correct, Mr. Lang? Or because we don't know if we will have enough on the board or on the committee?
Well, we've left it up on the meeting calendar on the internet. And I think it's safe to assume that, there's a good likelihood it'll be there, but because we don't know what committee appointments will be.
Right.
With such a large number of new members, it's possible that committee dates and times may need to be changed in order to accommodate everyone. So I've just been telling all the department heads to get their work done and pile it up, and we're going to do our best to get it to you just as quick as we can.
Okay.
And I think we can plan on having a meeting then, but like I said, with the turnover.
Yeah. No, I understand.
We just don't know.
I understand.
So pile it up and be ready to go.
Okay. That's all I have,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Supervisor Mapes, Facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last meeting was on March 23rd, mostly business as usual with one noted exception. I've been reporting for the last year and a half about this accessibility Wisconsin tracked wheelchair that we thought we were going to get. And the Rotary Club was going to be one of the key people as far as with that. Now the AAW has changed the rules and the regulations, and they're talking about sharing a chair between Menominee and Rice Lake and Barron, and it's getting even more complicated. And the Rotary Club is thinking about pulling the plug as far as endorsing the program. So stay tuned. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling it's not going to happen. And also we had discussion about camping in county parks, and I'm sure that will be continuing on as the meetings continue on. And then we had a request from the fair about for the fans, which we discussed at our last, the big butt fans. Yeah. So was it? Did you? Big butt?
Ass fans.
Don't get the company.
No, well, we'll just, you can call it ass, I'll call it butts, so that's okay. You know, I mean, but anyway, and our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 27th. That's my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Tripp, judicial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judiciary and Law met on Monday, March 28th. Pretty standard meeting, but that was our first live and in-person meeting in about 2 years. And we met in room 54 of the Government Center, as opposed to where we normally meet over in the Judicial Building. And one of the topics of conversation that will be ongoing is how to continue those meetings. We have a number of department heads that come from all over the place. So being able to zoom into those meetings is very often really useful for those folks. And having the meetings recorded is very useful also. Otherwise, business as usual. I can predict that the sheriff's office will continue to have difficulties recruiting qualified employees for the sheriff's department. But otherwise, the staffing situation looks reasonably good overall at this point. We have a meeting scheduled for April 25th, again in room 54 at 4:30. And like everybody else, I anticipate that there are likely some changes that might need to be made in those times and schedules as the new board members take hold. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson, CRT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, our CRT meeting met in this room Monday of this week, face to face for our first meeting in a long time. And it was really fun to be able to be together again that way. And the entire staff of our Dunn County Extension showed up, and each one of them made a very short presentation, which was really, really interesting and nice to have them all in the room and to share what they've been doing all year long. As you know, the CRT, where we've been pushing that T in that acronym for, or that initials. So the rural tourism and Supervisor Jim Zons gave a very good report. He'll keep you updated at every one of your county board meetings as to how that's going. I think by your next meeting, not this Tuesday night, but next Tuesday night, but after that, how that's going, and you'll be able to zoom in and help him keep it current, because now in Zoom, you'll be able to find out what's going on in all of Dunn County, events and activities and places to visit throughout the year. So we're very excited about that. So, and I give a lot of credit to Supervisor Zons for doing that. Now, what we did at this last meeting that I was chair of and kind of reviewed then the year, our highlights, we think, was broadband, and you won't hear until July whether the grants that they applied for, remember there were 7 of them, 5 of them for 24/7, and 1 of them for up in your area, Supervisor Johnson in town of Grant from Mosaic, and then in town of Colfax from Bloomer Telephone. And they applied for, we submitted 100,000, you remember, but I found out there were applicants for 600,000. So many of those grants will probably not be accepted. So I want you to know that, and the money, when we applied it, and if the grant isn't accepted, of course, then that money will be set aside and you can decide what to do with it at another date. Finally, I closed the meeting with a thanks, and you mentioned that in the article of the Colfax, Glenwood City and Boyceville paper, it had the headlines, "The big ass fans for your barns." And I complimented Leanne Ralph because she's done an excellent job of covering our meetings. And you know, that's the only newspaper that really does cover it. And I think we have to be appreciative of the fact that we can go back and read about our meetings, and other people in the public can read it in one of those papers. So, Mr. Chairman, and finally, we close with a tentative date for the next meeting. I would close by saying that the chairman of the CRT serves on the PR&D committee, which we met with yesterday morning. And that Supervisor Morehouse and I are both on that. And the chairman of that committee also serves on my CR&T committee, which would be Chairman Tom Quinn. So you'll have some new committee next year, obviously, because you'll have a new CR&T chairman. And finally, my last official meeting right now is here. And so I bid you, it's been a great pleasure, Mr. Chairman, to everybody to serve during this time. Thank you.
Supervisor Morehouse, do you have anything to add for PR&D? We had a couple of things on our agenda, but I was just wondering if you had
No, I
anything
mean,
else.
I think that, oops, sorry. The committee is just endlessly appreciative of Chase and the work that he's doing. I almost intervened when he was laying out those two changes today. He's been working on this failed manure storage unit for a very long time, and I think they work very effectively with farmers, and they're pretty tenacious about aiding farmers as well as trying to address our resource and water quality problems. So that's the only thing that I have to add.
Okay.
Chairman Quinn was, of course, not certain about whether he has a recount on Monday, about whether there will be a meeting as scheduled on the 26th. That would be Tuesday, the 26th. And of course, who will chair. So.
Yep, we'll have to wait and see after the 19th.
Right.
All right, the next meeting date is May 11th. That's tentative, I imagine, like all the other dates. I want to thank, this is my last meeting of this group. And I want to thank you all. Frequently I've been asked, how I could put in so much time. And the reason I could is because of you people. And I'm sorry I'm getting emotional. But I really enjoyed working with each and every one of you and with all the staff. You all made it so easy and wonderful to work down here and put my time in. I'm really gonna miss it. Sorry. So we're adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to suggest that we recognize our guys that are leaving. Dave, Jim, Chuck. We've lost a lot of good men here that have the welfare of the county at heart, so.
You'll be missed.
Thank you very much.